Hi! Now you'll watch the fourth installment of our video mini-series. This video is titled Embarking on a Magical Journey with Deaf and Hard of Hearing Students. You'll have the opportunity to get to know Daniel Veit, who currently works in a deaf school. For over 20 years, Daniel has been teaching work experience. Join me as I chat with him about what can help prepare deaf and hard of hearing students for the real world after graduation. Ready? Let's go. Hi. So tell me about yourself, your journey thus far with work experience, your educational background, your family, and so on.
Thank you for having me here. My name is Daniel Veit. I have over 20 years of experience working with deaf and hard of hearing students in this field of transition, self-advocacy, job searching, work skills, etc. I have experience working in K-12 as well as in college settings. I previously worked at New Mexico School for the Deaf. Then I worked at Gallaudet University, helping students find jobs and internships. Now I'm back working in K-12. I feel like we need to start working with students at a younger age. I am deaf, and my parents are both hearing. They both learned sign language when they found out I was deaf. I have always had a passion for working in this field, because I feel it's a critical component for what our deaf and hard of hearing students should be learning in order to find success once they finish school. That's very important to me.
Yes, I agree. Would you mind sharing a little about your educational background? What did school look like for you growing up?
My educational background, K-12?
Yes.
Okay. I was briefly enrolled in Pennsylvania School for the Deaf, but my parents decided to transfer me to a mainstream school. At that school, there were about 20 students in the deaf program, and I stayed in that program until I graduated high school. After that, I went to Gallaudet because I was curious what it would be like to be fully in deaf culture and in the deaf world. I wanted the opportunity to meet more people. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in communications. Later on, I got a degree from Drexel University in higher education. I was working at Gallaudet at that time, and I enjoyed student support services and the Career Center. So I have my BA from Gallaudet and my MA from Drexel University.
Thank you. That's perfect. I'm always fascinated by people's backgrounds because we all come from different backgrounds. It's important to know these different success stories, and yours is no exception. Now I'd like to share with the audience about current work experience issues. Statistics from data collected by the National Deaf Center show that about half, 50% or about 52% of deaf people are not working. So that's not a good statistic to see. Also, those who are working who are deaf with additional disabilities are only at about 32% or so. Of those, they tend to work part-time. Those aren't very pretty numbers. Needless to say, it's critical to prepare our deaf and hard of hearing students with work experience prior to graduation. From your own personal experience and your own work, what is the goal in preparing students for the real world post-graduation?
There are a lot of factors involved with that. I'm a big believer in incidental learning. I do think our deaf and hard of hearing students sometimes miss out on that important information of what it's like to work in the real world. Do they always get the information they need? To me, entering the workforce is almost like a game. I always preach to my students that if you're playing in the championship basketball game, would you sit back and not do anything to prepare? Or would you practice ahead of the game? And students always say yes, of course, we must practice so we're ready. The same concept applies to working. We need to understand how to get our foot in the door. with the application process and all of that. It takes time to explain that, making sure students understand each step of the process and why it's important. I think another big part of it is self-advocacy. Students with disabilities need to understand their rights, what kind of accommodations or services they need to be successful. I think school and work are a little different. While they're in school, the IDEA Act protects students and puts the responsibility on the schools to provide necessary accommodations and services. So a lot of students are given what they need, but when they graduate, it stops and it becomes their responsibility. So it's really important for us to make sure students understand what accommodations they need and how to ask for it in the real world. There are a lot of different issues and factors that need to be learned and acquired, and practical experience is always the best way to learn. So students need to get out into the world. They can't get that experience only in the classroom. There's where they learn how the real world operates. They learn how to ask and receive, how to communicate, and the list goes on. Essentially, they need to learn all of it. The entire ball game.
You're right. You touched on many important topics there. With incidental learning, you're so right. Oftentimes, our students don't have access to information in their homes. They might not know what their parents do or what their work looks like.
They're not hearing how it works, right?
Right. It feels more important for our deaf and hard of hearing students to learn that, meaning the responsibility is on us to teach it. And you had an important observation about the IDEA Act and how the system has to make sure that students are given what they need. But do they know how to receive those services? That's such an important observation. It means before graduation, we have to prepare them on how to get what they need. Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up.
To tie that into IL, incidental learning. I know with a lot of parents of deaf children, some sign and some don't. I have a favorite activity with the students, usually with my 8th graders, since they're hitting that transitional legal working age of 13 to 14 years old. That's when we start transition planning. So this favorite activity is a family tree. The activity forces my students to sit down with their parents and find out what everyone in the family does for work. It encourages the start of that conversation, and I think everyone has their own journey that led them to getting where they are. Some got there through their network, others had luck on their side, and some got there through excellent planning and a strong mindset. Regardless, it's important for everyone to understand that the journey is never linear. Everyone has their own path. So I like that activity. It's great seeing what the students learned after that conversation with their parents or family members. It's an enlightening moment, and we need to encourage those conversations.
Right. What a great activity. Oftentimes when I ask my kids what their parents do for a living, they're not sure. You're right, that's pretty common. That's a great, important activity. Very good. Okay, so now in terms of work experience, we usually always try to practice things like a resume and filling out applications, but we also want to teach self-advocacy, work ethics, and work experience in general. I'm curious what your thoughts are about those 3 things. What are the absolute musts in this line of teaching? What are your thoughts?
All those are certainly important, but if I had to pick one, I might go with work ethics. I feel like that can lead to the best self-advocacy skills for a better work experience. Employers will always want to hire someone who has a positive attitude, motivation to learn, and good communication skills. I think it's important to enter the workforce with that type of attitude and approach. Some people say that work experience is something that gets you the job, but work ethic is what allows you to hold on to that job.
Right.
And with self-advocacy, some people are quick to demand their rights. But you have to understand the people in the work world might not know how to work with deaf people. It's important to approach the person and explain that your needs being met will set you up for success. Part of the responsibility is on the students to educate people how you both can work together to maximize productivity and work success. It means you're working together. It's important to go in with a good attitude, and that's why I'd choose work ethics in answer to your question.
I agree. I think you're right. When you have good work ethics, you will know how to approach things in the right way to get the help you need. Right, I agree. That's the key. Okay. So many parents typically want to know the local resources that are available for students. Would you mind giving us some important local resources that parents can utilize for their deaf and hard of hearing children?
The first few that come to mind are VR, vocational rehabilitation. Sometimes there's a deaf employment center, deaf community resources, and a social security office. You can meet with a benefits specialist who can explain things in depth and offer information about working.
I'm curious about VR.
People say it all the time, that networking is how people find work like 90% of the time. That's an important resource people can try to use. It can help to find a hearing person. Me as an example, for me as a deaf person, I was fortunate to have parents who signed. They had access to a lot of resources. They used their network on my behalf, which allowed me to gain work experience. That really broke me out of my comfort zone. As I realized it wasn't that bad, having a network was important for that process, so pass it on. Give your children the opportunity to get out of their comfort zone and into the working world. They'll realize it's not that bad. Nerves are expected getting out of that comfort zone. But it's crucial to create those opportunities.
Right. Same here. My first job was at McDonald's and my second job was at Safeway. It happened through networking. Someone knows someone.
How did you get those jobs? Through friends?
Me? Oh, I knew someone. Well, let me back up. Someone knew the manager at McDonald's, and they needed to find a kid to work there. So they asked if I was interested, and I was. On the other hand, I had a friend who was applying to work at a different fast food place, and it was a struggle. Through my network, I got the job quickly.
Yes, right.
That manager was hearing, but totally open to working with a deaf kid, so it was no issue. Really, it goes both ways. They were open to hiring me as a deaf person, and I was willing to work with them. That helps. It was the same with Safeway. My friend's mother worked in VR, and she happened to know there was a job opening, so I got that job through her. I do want to comment on VR because it's something very important for parents to know about. You can apply for services as young as 14, although typically they recommend 16. Still, I want parents to know they shouldn't delay in applying. Would you mind offering more about that?
Yes, that's right. You have a right to apply early. Sometimes VR will recommend waiting until junior or senior year. But you can legally apply for services as early as 14 years old. Keep in mind, though, you have to maintain contact with them, and every state is a little different. In Texas, for example, if you start VR services at 14, then you must keep contact every 6 months to keep the case open. That's important to know. People with disabilities have to understand that they need to keep their case open.
Right. And in some states, I don't know about Texas, but in Washington state, sometimes there's a waiting list. It can be 1 or 2 years before you finally receive those services. So I always implore parents to start early.
There's no wait list here, thankfully.
Oh, you're lucky. Again, it's all about taking action, actively seeking and finding resources.
At the same time, understanding the policies, too. Your state has a waiting list. Mine doesn't. It's important for students to understand that. They have to know the policies and norms for services and how long they can take. We have a medical waiver here, and the waiting list is 15 years. You have to sign up as early as infancy, so we need to nudge parents to sign up and keep in contact every year so your name stays on the list. If you miss calling them one time to keep your case active, you're off the list and you need to start all over again. There's one person here at our school whose role is the parent liaison for that very reason. It's typically for students with additional disabilities only. But again, it's crucial to know your community resources and policies.
And by a medical waiver, you mean those with additional disabilities?
Exactly.
Yes, right. Students with additional disabilities should apply as early as possible during their school years. Don't wait until after graduation to apply because at that point they're considered independent adults, right?
That's right. I've seen 2 different families, one with those service benefits and another family without them. For the family without benefits, the child was suffering as they were stuck at home. The opposite was true for the other family, so it's nice that the state pays for those services. It frees up the family to do whatever they can do. I think sometimes families or people don't understand that. And they think it's not worth pursuing. I know it's a long process, but it's necessary to pay attention. And make sure you understand the services and commit despite a long waiting list.
And DVR support is typically short, like 3 months, right? Is that the same as your state? They provide support to make sure they stay in a stable job.
I can't answer that.
But DDA is for life. When I worked with DVR in the past, it was about 3 months, sometimes a little longer. But they typically close the case once the person has gotten a job and they're stable in that job. That process is about 3 months. But DDA works with that person for life.
Yes, that's right.
That's really nice. So I'd like to ask about when deaf people work in environments where most or usually all of the people are hearing. What communication tools would you recommend they consider to communicate with hearing people at work?
Again, I think it goes back to work ethics. You first need to have a positive attitude. Many people won't know how to work with you, and it falls on the person who needs to communicate. You can do that by writing back and forth or typing into your phone. I've started using an app that I love called Otter. It's almost like an AI interpreter. It can catch a conversation of 4 to 5 people and distinguish between their voices. It's nice to have, and of course it can capture speaking, but then I'll respond back by typing. I hope someday I can sign into my phone and it will come out in English. It's progress though. Back in the day we had to rely on writing. It's gotten better. You can also teach signs. Not only does it help with communication, but it helps the environment become more positive too. It's a win-win for communication and helping others to learn. It goes a long way. What else? I do believe in teaching signs that are relevant to the work you do. I'm working with a person right now who doesn't know sign language, but I'm using the same words with them again and again. So I'll teach those signs to aid in our conversations. Teach signs that will be used every day. Beyond, "Hi, my name is," which you only use once.
Right. Things like yes, no, thank you, that kind of thing, right?
That's fine to do, but more specifically, I'm talking about work jargon. I'm trying to think of an example. Let's say I'm a person who works in the computer field or with a database. I could teach signs like download, upload, I'm stuck, fingerspelling the term data, the sign for help, etc. It's nice to have those field-specific signs to help carry that communication.
That makes sense. I'm thinking of a retail environment, so where, help, yes, no, and thank you. Those more basic signs for that type of job.
Help, this is heavy, or if you can't find something. Signs like that, yeah.
The sign for customer.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so now I'm curious for the hearing community. How would you like for them to advocate? We've already talked about preparing students and changing their attitudes, but now let's flip the script. If you could talk to the hearing people in the workplace, what issues would you like to train them on? To work with people with disabilities or with deaf people?
When I worked at Gallaudet, we would provide training to different corporations, like Volkswagen, for example, and we would call it culture training. It was basically Deaf Culture 101, introducing things like how deaf people call attention by tapping, using lights, or waving. We would explain to not approach deaf people from behind, as that can be startling. Approach them from the side instead. We taught about these deaf cultural norms and behavior, how we're visual, etc. We would usually also do a true or false activity where we would ask about assumptions of deaf people and have a discussion about it. I think it's nice to have that content to work with for better conversations. That's not all, though. Hearing people can do a lot more to make the environment more welcoming, like learning to sign "Good morning, can I help you?" and things like that. Try to be as inclusive as possible. Don't leave that deaf person out.
I love that. I love the idea of cultural training. I love that. It would be nice if they could set that up and invite people to it. I haven't seen that myself. I've done employment consulting work before, but I just haven't seen that kind of training. I should have thought of that. It's a great idea.
With Texas School for the Deaf, TSD, it's such a big school. We contract with about 50 different companies. We always try to invite people to come here for a short morning training session where we provide breakfast and some instruction on what it's like working with a deaf person to learn how to make their work environment more welcoming. We'll teach a few signs. Most people who attend come in quite nervous because working with deaf people is new to them, and that training helps to break that nervousness down as they learn it's really not that bad. It's nice. Sometimes we'll have someone from another business give a testimony on their experience working with us, which reinforces that idea. Unfortunately, sometimes it takes another hearing business owner to attest to the ease of working with deaf people, but in any case, it's nice when it happens.
Right? Very cool. Okay, this question is my favorite. When I travel, I always say if you're not sure what to do or how to help a deaf person, all you have to do is ask. But sometimes, it might be a child who is 5 years old, and they might not know what they need or want. So I'll say to ask a successful adult. If the child is deaf, ask several successful deaf adults. So now I want to ask you for the audience, because I'm sure they're curious, what helped make you successful? Would you mind discussing that?
That's a good question. I think supportive parents helped. The support of my teachers helped. One thing that's really stuck with me was from my high school. I was in a mainstream school that had an elementary school, middle school, and high school all under one roof. What still sticks with me is that once a month, we would assemble together for a guest presenter who was a deaf professional. They would tell us about the work they do, and it was always so interesting to have someone deaf working in that field. It was so cool. It was nice to have that exposure to successful deaf professionals. All from different fields, mind you. I see deaf students whose role models are deaf teachers. And that's about it, because it's all they know. There are so many more role models out there. And that exposure goes a long way to illustrate those opportunities. There are deaf professionals in a variety of fields. I try to bring that here as well. Do you have career day at your school?
Yes, we do. And also as a work experience teacher, I show videos every Friday of different deaf people working. I can't remember the exact title, but the videos spotlight deaf firefighters, deaf construction workers, deaf doctors, and so on. So I show those videos every Friday and then we discuss it. We talk about what kind of accommodations they might use or what might help them. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, the videos do that. Here we have career clusters, where we have about 16 or 17 different groups, depending on who asks to join. I tend to have something out to them every week. We have what's called advisory, which is kind of like a homeroom. The teacher will review one specific career. With 2 to 3 different videos with deaf people signing, then we follow a discussion. And that's fine to have, but we also have career day. Once a year, where we have maybe 15 to 20 people come in, electricians, hairstylists, etc. Students will sign up for which career they feel suits them. It's nice to have the hands-on visual experience where they can ask questions. That's always good. And it's amazing seeing the students chatting in the cafeteria about what they learned from each presentation afterwards. It's so nice.
Right. Here at my school, we have 2 days. One day is JA World. Do you know Junior Achievement?
I don't.
Some states have it. Anyway, it typically focuses on money and budgeting. They'll go to different stores, mock-up stores like Wells Fargo or Home Depot and whatever else. So we have that, and the person who coordinates that added another day called Deaf to Deaf. This is their chance to meet with deaf professionals and ask them questions. It's a great resource. The second day is All-Star Day. Everyone gets together to celebrate and give out awards. We usually put that in with careers. And I love that because often parents are shocked that deaf people can do so many things. So it's great exposure, not just for the students, but for the parents too.
You bring up a good point here. I'm thinking of hearing families. As we know, about 90% of deaf kids have hearing parents. Often, the deaf child is born, and the parents wonder what they'll be capable of doing. Plus, they often have limited experience with deaf people. I think it's important for them to know and meet some successful deaf professionals in different fields. They realize that their child will be able to do that too. People always need something to believe in, and the parents should be the first people to believe in their child and their potential. In reality, we're teaching both the children and the parents too. So fortunately, go ahead.
Medical professionals often don't know either. They don't know a lot of things about deaf people. Sometimes they would share misinformation. My friend's doctor shared with my friend's mother, after discovering that her baby is deaf, that the best she, the baby, can do is selling pencils. Luckily, my friend's mother had a sister who knew many deaf people and was quick to assure her that wasn't the case. But wow, that kind of information from a medical professional is very dangerous.
My sister is a doctor. She went through medical school. She said one day they finally talked about the ear. She said they spent 2 weeks talking about everything to do with the ear, but nothing about language, nothing about culture. It was more about the anatomy and physiology of parts of the ear. That's what's required for doctors going through medical school. My sister would speak up during class about it, considering she has a deaf brother and she knows ASL as well. She even went to a deaf camp with me. It wasn't sitting right with her. She wanted all the other medical students to understand that deafness shouldn't be looked at as something to be fixed. Deaf people are fine, they just use a different language. So that was interesting.
So you're saying your sister was in med school and got 8 years of medical training.
She did, and she's a doctor now. This is while she was a medical student.
Okay, and they only had 2 weeks?
It was like 2 days or 2 weeks, I can't remember. but it was solely focused on the ear itself.
To talk about the ear and deafness, that's it.
Just the ear, then they moved on.
Wow, that's crazy.
Nothing about deaf culture or sign language, nothing at all.
Interesting. Okay, so I'm ready to wrap things up. If you could use magic to make changes to the hiring process in today's working world, what would you do?
I see it happen often with a lot of companies and businesses. They have these reservations about hiring deaf people, and they won't even give them a chance. But when they finally do, they have this aha moment that it wasn't a bad decision. In fact, that deaf employee might be the best one they have. I wish companies would have some sort of test or trial where anyone could join in a position. This would be a better filtering system than the standard interviewing process. Interviews don't always result in the best person. I think it's time to rethink the hiring process. Just as an example, let's say in the first 2 weeks of January, 40 different people come to a job, deaf or not. I would bet that would be an enlightening moment for employers. The deaf people can do so many things.
I agree.
I wish we could have that kind of strategic approach instead of paper applications. The current process really puts our deaf students at a disadvantage compared to others. You really have to read between the lines. Like these days with kiosk interviews, they're extremely tough to get through. They ask a lot of...
They're language heavy.
Right. It's a lot of reading between the lines and things you can't catch sometimes. You have to really be fully competent with the language to understand what kind of answer they're really looking for. So yeah, that's it.
Right. I agree. Thank you for sharing. And I really want to say thank you for your time. I enjoyed chatting with you. I hope that your message will make an impact on parents so they can have a better understanding of how to prepare their children before graduation.
Of course, and I appreciate meeting another person who is so dedicated in this field. Thank you for all you do as well.
Awesome. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for taking the time to watch and learn. I hope you enjoyed getting to know Daniel Veit and that you were able to benefit from this chat. Hopefully you feel more prepared to help deaf and hard of hearing children to be readied before they graduate and enter the working world. Thank you.